Welcome back, everybody. Hills and Quads Media here on YouTube, of course, podcasts as well, but I never post audio because I'm lazy. No, not really. I work my ass off. Joining me today, we have a special guest, host of the Paltrowcast and the DLR Cast, and author of the upcoming book, the DLR Book, How David Lee Roth Changed the World, and me doing the Van Halen ranking album series. I was researching a lot of stuff, and this gentleman happened to pop up. I saw his love of pro wrestling as well, and every band that I've ever thought of, loved, or idolized, he's interviewed most of them. So, joining the show, Darren Paltrowitz. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for the very kind intro. Love your background. And this is going to be a special interview for me because you know what kayfabe is. And there's a lot of kayfabe in David Lee Roth. And that's not something that you could bring up in every interview about this book or about Dave.
Yeah, and it's funny that, the wrestling thing because Diamond Dallas Page did your forward. Diamond Dallas Page is one of the most genuine human beings I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
I've ever interviewed. Stays in contact with you, checks up on you every once in a while. It's
Yeah.
wild. And I wanted to start off with actually shout out to DDP for big leaguing his way into plugging his DDPY and the book Positively Unstoppable, The Art of Owning It, now available on Amazon.
Yes. That's the DDP
we,
way. I mean,
we have to plug DDP when we mention him.
yeah, I mean, he says it. He's promoting himself because these are the things that he believes in. A lot of people, they're promoting, a timeshare or something that's a quick paycheck, but not Dallas.
Timeshare, lotto tickets, whatever.
Exactly. There were WCW lotto tickets, but that's not what we're
There
talking
were.
about.
Yeah. Or Uncle Terry, as we refer Hulk Hogan, his new edibles that are available. They don't sponsor the show, but I mean, if Terry wants to ship some, my way, go for
Terry
it.
from Florida. Gotta love Terry.
my youngest son has always called him Uncle Terry since he was tiny. So
Sure.
that's what we've always called him on the show. We're like, who's Hulk Hogan? We just call him Uncle Terry.
Yeah.
Let's start here. Obviously, you're a huge Diamond Dave fan, as am I.
Mm-hmm.
When did the whole book idea start and
Started
how?
like 2.5 years or so ago when I kind of realized that I was accidentally, or sometimes accidentally, working Van Halen and David Lee Roth questions into everything, all these interviews I was doing, and I had so much material. And then at that point, I'd already interviewed like 10 people that Dave had worked with. And the DLR cast was going with Steve Roth, my co host, no relation to Diamond Dave, and going, I think I have a book here. So it started off as an interview collection. And then I showed it to some publishers and literary agents, and they went, you got a book, but we will not take an interview collection. We need a narrative. So that all started, about 2 years ago.
Which it's awesome. I mean, it is a narrative as well as, your collection of interviews. And you were kind enough to let me see an advanced copy. And
Thank
I've
you.
spent the last few days reading it religiously. Couldn't put it down,
Oh,
honestly.
thank you for the
So
kind words.
pre-order it now on Amazon. It's coming out on the 1st of January, 2024, correct?
Correct. I didn't choose that release date. My publisher did. I didn't know that books could come out that day, but it kind of makes sense
I didn't.
in a way. They always do
Yeah,
the
it's
New
kind of
Year.
awesome.
They do the New Year, New You kind of promotions for the early part of the year when people are doing their New Year's resolutions. And I think we all want to be Dave in some way, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and you kind of can look at it this way too. It's in time for the 40th anniversary of 1984.
Totally correct. Also, that is why they pay you the big bucks, Tommy.
That's right. And you can Venmo me the
Yeah,
20 you
yeah,
owe
yeah.
me. We gotta work that in. Somebody always says that little dad joke. You quote your brother in the book about asking if Diamond Dave is a good singer. I've often said, much like your brother says, everybody can sing, but I always add to it, it takes practice, practice, practice. And that's my Danny Tanner moment with my kids when they say how bad they sound in the shower. But
Yeah, people say that. So my brother has, besides my brother being a really acclaimed choral teacher, he has a company called Choral Clarity, which does have that concept of anyone can sing. really anyone can match pitch. A lot of people just talk themselves out of it psychologically. So I figured, hey, my brother's in my Rolodex or phone. I can ask him about this as opposed to Ken Tamplin pretty easily. So I asked my brother, and he gave me his 2 cents.
Shout out to Ken Tamplin,
I've never
where
met
the proof
Ken.
is in the singing.
Yeah, I mean, you have your legendary vocal teachers and critiques like Don Lawrence and Ken Tamplin, who really should be on American Idol. But hey, what do I know?
Yeah. I'm always afraid, and I have to say this because I always want to comment on his videos on Instagram or his YouTube videos. But Ken Tamplin, I'm always worried about his tongue when he sings, like he's going to clamp down on it one time. I don't know if you actually watch the videos, but
It's
it's pretty entertaining just to watch.
yeah, I know what you mean there. That I mean, you can sing the correct biological way, you could sing the cool way, or you could go between those two. For example, like Mike Patton is doing those guttural screams, but then proper
Yeah.
vocal technique. I think the real truth is that you have to go somewhere between the two. And honestly, Dave has always been a chest singer, but I think if Dave
Mhm.
wanted, he could properly sing.
That's something my dad always told me. He said, "You got to learn how to sing from your diaphragm and stop singing from your chest so much."
Yeah, I mean,
Which it's true.
you're right. My brother's right. I'm wrong. I'm not a singer, but I appreciate.
But you can sing. That's the thing.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Adam
and you,
Paltrowitz.
and you can order my program now, Tommy Walter Vocal Academy.
Yeah, I will.
Um, here's another. It's just a small thing, but it like when reading the book, it just made me think of this question: why do you think Dave didn't win any VMAs for California Girls or Just a Gigolo? I mean, those videos were groundbreaking. But it was the mid '80s, so everybody was groundbreaking. You had Madonna and Michael Jackson and all those people. You had Dire Straits
Hmm.
videos, Prince videos, all that. But like Diamond Dave in the mid '80s was like the darling of MTV.
Right. I agree with
So
you. Yeah.
so why don't you think is it just those artists that kind of held him back from winning, you think, or was it like some ploy from somebody on the academy of the VMAs to keep Dave out of it?
You ask a really good question that I haven't thought about before. And I don't know the answer to this, but do we know who the governing body of the MTV VMAs is? Have we ever known? Because, for example, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we know it's Jan Wenner's puppets, rather, and the inductees get to vote. So, in other words,
Right.
it's a little bit corrupt, hence keeping out Motley Crue and deserving bands. But then it's also people like Questlove who supposedly led the campaign for Ringo. We know, yeah, you just
Yeah.
pointed at Kiss. Tom Morello supposedly helped Kiss get in, but we don't know with the VMAs who's voting for it. I remember they used to have the viewer request award. They had some kind of thing that you could dial in and vote 75 cents
Yeah, it
a
was
call.
like yeah, it was something like that. And watching, I don't know if you're like me cuz I mean, you wrote a book about Dave. So
I am one.
I'm a, I I'm an uber like nerd geek, whatever you want to call it. People were, triggered by some of those words every once in a while.
Sure.
But like I remember like especially during the pandemic, like I would go back and watch, I mean I still do, but especially then. But I'll go back and watch like the old VMAs or stuff like that. Anything with like somebody that I like that I either hadn't seen before or want to see again. And it like he was like all over those though. Like they were constantly trying to get like a backstage segment or red carpet segment with Dave. And I mean,
Yeah.
he was like the Drake of now or whoever's. I don't listen to current music. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But, and even when he was wild, crazy Dave, he was so intellectual and he has a way of putting things that I clearly don't. But it's really amazing. Like his interview with Joe Rogan, I'm sure you saw it.
Ugh.
I've watched it several times, and it's just like he has a way of putting stuff that I just can't fathom.
The
He's
first
so wild.
Cutting you off, the first Joe Rogan
Sure.
interview I thought was largely interesting. The second one was scary. And the
I
memes
don't know if I saw the second
the second
one.
one was in the midst of COVID. The first one, I believe, was a little before COVID in Vegas. Don't shoot me if I'm wrong on that one. But you make a very good point about Dave's relationship with MTV. Because obviously, Van Halen was one of the early MTV bands. And then when he went solo, he did MTV premiere kind of stuff. And then he did stuff around Skyscraper. And then with A Little Ain't Enough, he guest hosted. You can see some of that on YouTube, that him presenting the music video and doing commentary. And when his autobiography was out, he did MTV News stuff, and he popped up at the VMAs 2, 3 years ago, one of his last public appearances. So Dave has had a 40-year ish run with MTV. That, how many people can you say that about? It's Dave, Madonna, anybody else? Duran Duran,
Yeah.
arguably.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like Hall& and Oates, Huey Lewis in the '80s, but I mean, after that, it was kinda over
Yeah,
with, you
they
know?
became VH1 artists over time.
Yeah, yeah, and nothing against them because I love all their music, but
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. Like, even, the Van Halen reunion that or quote unquote reunion that happened, it happened on the VMAs. So
yeah.
it's a very Diamond Dave, Van Halen, MTV interweave them, you know?
Yeah, Dave is like that with MTV and Howard Stern, and no
Yes.
other media does he seem to go on again and again and again. So in researching this book, not to make this, "Hey, I'm pushing the book," but
No, push it.
relevant
I
to
want you to push it because I want people to read it.
thank you, Tommy. I mean, relevant to what's in the book is Dave seems to do a media outlet once or twice and then not come back, almost like a checklist. Yet MTV and Howard Stern are regularly resurfacing in terms of the press he does and where the headlines come from. In other words, he's kind of like, I'm going to save the salacious stuff for MTV and Howard Stern, and then everybody else is going to get the Dave raps that you get on every other publication and interview.
You break down the different uses of the phrase "crazy from the heat" very well. I love that.
Thank you.
I popped for that, to use a wrestling phrase.
Yes, sir.
It's funny because over the years I've noticed a lot of bands and artists do that. Kiss has recycled phrases and certain words that the common person doesn't use in everyday life, but here it pops up in a Kiss song, especially Gene Simmons,
Yes.
who you've interviewed. Green with Envy,
Oh,
that
thank
you've
you.
interviewed Gene, Paul, Ace, Bruce,
You
uh,
did your research.
but also
Thank you.
I did, yeah. I'm yeah, like I said, I'm a nerd. So anything I do, I go, full bore.
Totally.
But it's consistent also with Bon Jovi. They have John Bon Jovi has one phrase that he's used in either a song title, he's worked into tried to work into an album title, or anything like that, and it's open all night. And he says sometimes you just wake up, you have this line or phrase, and you just keep trying it. Sometimes it works, most of the times it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it was supposed to be a movie, and that's kind of where I wanted to lead with this. You interviewed Billy Sheehan, who obviously was in Dave's solo band.
Mhm.
Great solo band, underrated band.
Preaching to the choir.
Can't stand it. Like, I mean, I love Van Halen. I love Van Halen. And there's even, like, especially doing this ranking series like I talked about, there's some Sammy stuff that, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But even Dave's solo band, while it, like, a lot of people compare it to Van Halen, it's not Van Halen. And there are differences.
Mhm.
And people don't see it, and I see it, and I think that band is severely underrated. However, back to Billy Sheehan.
Yeah.
Like I said, it turns into a whole rant.
Look, I'm on
Um,
your level. People,
yeah.
the book is dedicated to anybody who encourages me to talk about David Lee Roth more, and the wife is at top of that list, and apparently you are too, Tommy.
Yeah, thank you. So Billy Sheehan you interviewed,
Mhm.
and you asked him how far it actually got into production, and he says that, not to give too much away, but that it got far enough where wardrobe was being done.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, do you think, as a fan of Dave and, the music and just the character, the gimmick, if you will,
Mhm.
do you think it would be a movie that would have actually done like anything, or do you think it would have been one of those movies we go, "Oh, you're a Van Halen fan. Oh, you're a Dave fan. You got to check this out. It's so bad it's good."
There's two answers that. The first answer is, what's the budget commitment to marketing it? Because it seems like almost anything in that time, aside from Ishtar, that had a big budget behind it, was going to be a big hit. It was just about the money end. And if it weren't, then of course you have things like Monster Squad that become HBO hits, or after the theatrical run, cable hits. So there's always the chance of that. The other thing is the script, I think, is funny. It's not focused. What I love about Dave is when he's most concise because he has a collaborator that helps edit it. So, in other words, Dave usually has 70 or 80% of the idea, but he needs the person, whether it's Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai, etc. He needs that person to bring that last part in. The script I read, I don't know if it's the absolute final version. It needs that last 20% punch out. There's so many funny bits. There's eye candy. There's great music, but using your modern day Judd Apatow lens on movies, where there's a joke every 20 seconds, whereas you watch Caddyshack and it's a joke every 4 minutes.
Right.
Watching with 2023 goggles on, I don't know how we'd think about it now. It'd probably be a cancelable movie based on something.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But I mean, in this time, what isn't, you know?
Yeah, I think we've seen success with rock stars and rock legends with making movies, but we're not talking about Give My Regards to Broad Street when we're talking about Paul McCartney. A lot of them got forgotten.
I actually just watched that like 6 months
Oh,
ago.
did you?
Yeah. It's, it's okay.
Yeah, a lot of our people that we look up to from the musical end, with Madonna, her movies were. Okay, my wife loves Desperately Seeking Susan, last time I asked,
Right.
but her movie career is a footnote at this point. And then there's
Yeah.
other people, like when you see Joan Jett live, I think she does the song from Light of Day in her set. So you never know, just because a person sold a lot of millions of records, if the movie is going to have staying power or matters, you know?
Yeah, it's like Rick Springfield. Like, how many people, like the common fan, seek out like Hard to Hold? You know, not many.
Yeah, and
And that's since the beginning of rock music. I mean, Elvis. I'm a diehard Elvis fan. I impersonated Elvis for 10 years,
whoa, 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 whoa,
and
whoa! Is
yeah,
there a book
yeah.
coming from Tommy Walter about that?
No,
Should
I've
be.
I've done some I've done some podcast episodes about my time in the jumpsuit, but as I was saying, like his movies are held in this high regard, even though everybody admits they're god awful.
Yeah,
And he's on the back of a truck singing about Old MacDonald to a little kid for no reason. And
yeah.
but it just kind of adds to that Elvis crazy aura, and anything, and especially in that time that you could have with somebody of that caliber, they ate it up. And I think, turning this back to Dave, I think it would have been the same thing, like we talked about with MTV and everything. Get them behind it to promote it, have him host, whatever show on MTV that was on at the time, because this is pre Headbangers Ball, obviously. But I mean, whatever he could, have him and Martha Quinn co-host a show, or they could really put some time and effort behind it. I think it's a shame that it never happened.
I agree with you. I'm not sure why he didn't then sell it to another studio, because let's say that they settled the case in 86 or 87, because he did sue CBS and get a settlement that included his director's fee and all that, but that court case is kind of swept under the rug. It's really hard to find, even if you are a PI. So let's say he settled in 87, and I think it was settled sooner. Dave still had 88 Skyscraper. He could have still done a movie if he wanted to. 9091, debatable, but still possible. 97, after the reunion attempt of Van Halen, I think he could have again. 2012, with Van Halen being back in the spotlight. If he wanted to do it, he could do it. But instead, we got that Tokyo Story movie in 2013. You ever watched that?
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, a lot of his stuff is strange and quirky, but in its Diamond Dave, aura, it's charming, I guess you could say, to use a nice term for it.
Pros and cons. In that Rogan interview, he talks about the Lennon-McCartney sound, how the McCartney sound is basically sweet, and then the Lennon is the peanut butter in your chocolate thing. I think that Dave is at his best when, to repeat myself, when he has that collaborator to help refine it, to give you that huge smile that you know is partially sarcastic. And
Yeah, yeah.
when that can be done, there is there are few things that I like more. It, Eat 'em and Smile holds up. It's funny, it's entertaining, it rocks, it's genre-wise all over the place. I feel the same way about the Crazy from the Heat EP. Feel the same way about Skyscraper. Again, it's funny, it rocks, it's energetic, it's well produced. So, classic Dave is classic Dave.
And speaking of those albums, the Crazy from the Heat EP, Eat 'em and Smile, Skyscraper,
Mhm.
all went platinum. They're getting a lot of love in recent years, obviously, with the almost but yet failed reunion. Fire Marshal apparently shut them down, whatever,
Yeah.
in LA. Yeah, I don't know how true that is, but
If
that's what
I
I
could
hear.
weigh in, there's a part about the book with Frank Meyer talking about his experience with that, and I think I included a part with Ralph. I'm sorry, his name is not Ralph, the singer of Steel Panther. What's
Michael
his name?
Starr.
Michael Diamond, is it?
Michael Starr.
Michael Starr. Yeah,
It was Michael Diamond at one time,
It
though.
wa it was, which makes you think, is that a Diamond Dave reference? Because he was the singer of Atomic Pumps? Probably.
Hmm.
But according to him, it was gonna happen. According to Frank Meyer, it was about to happen. Always the conspiracy theory of, did Dave call the fire marshal because he didn't want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, that very well could be, but who knows, man? I mean, that could have been something that changed everything. I mean, they could have done a tour, maybe having that amazing band behind him and not having to use tracks or something like that. Maybe that would have put a little fuel in the fire and like made him like be the Diamond Dave that we all grew up knowing and loving. It's really
Yeah.
weird. I wish it would have happened, even if it was just a one off. Put it out on a Blu-ray or something, or stream it on pay-per-view like Kiss just did.
Like Kiss just did. And by the way, kudos to you. Your recent commentary on Kiss, I liked it very much. I thought that you gave
Thank you.
perspective that other podcasts or other hosts didn't.
I appreciate that. That's what I go for. And doing research, like you said, I do my do. I
Do, do,
said
do,
do
do,
do.
do. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I like to, especially if I'm interviewing somebody, I like to go and watch other interviews and make sure that I'm not asking the same questions that everybody's
Ah,
asking. I mean, but you know what I mean? Like, you have those canned questions that you have to ask because not everybody watches or listens to every interview, but there's a lot of them that, you're like, okay, this is for my own personal sake. I have to ask this question. And I'm sure you feel that way because you always bring up Dave.
I do it, but in different kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Now I'm selective about who I bring it up to. So, for example, I was talking to the lead actor from the Stars Power universe. Do you know about the show called Power?
No.
Okay, so that supports my theory. You either have never heard of this show or you've watched all four series within this universe. It's like a Walking Dead universe. It's on Stars. And the
Okay.
lead actor who plays Tommy Egan is a secret DLR diehard. And the only way I knew that is a listener of the DLR cast who loves Power told me, "Hey, did you see this tweet? He referenced Sonrisa Salvaje." And you go, "Wait, what?" And it took me 2 years. I finally interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, and I threw in a DLR question, and his face lit up. In other words, he broke character from going, "And our new season is great, and this is great, and this is great." And you start seeing him, oh, he knows I'm a metalhead, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
That's great, man. I love stuff like that. Even just bringing it up in like everyday conversation, sometimes you find out who real fans are when you mention like the most minute little detail of something and somebody's like, "Oh yeah, I knew that." And you're like, "How'd you know that?" "Yeah, I'm a huge fan." "Oh, cool.
Yeah, I
We
think
can be friends now."
I'm totally with you. This book was intended to be for the diehards, and some of these things I see on Blabbermouth and Brave Words about the book are untrue. So a few of them say this book is based on dozens of conversations that that Paltrowitz had with Roth. And it's like, where did you get that? I spoke to him once in 2000.
I was gonna say, the only thing that's mentioned is really in the beginning
Yeah.
when you mentioned the interview you did in '03. That's really strange.
Yeah. They've been so kind to me over the years. It's just what
Yeah.
happens is one person copies and pastes one article and then it winds up on Ultimate Classic Rock, Brave Words, etc. And the question is, did the first person get it right or not? And then that's how wrong news spreads, or your book gets promoted every single time David Lee Roth gets written about. Goes either way.
Also, A Little Late Enough, which you've already mentioned, it didn't do too bad either. I mean, it did go gold,
Hmm.
and but my main point of all of that, tying it back together, why do you think the Dave solo era with Vi and Sheehan and Greg Bissonette, why do you think that went without praise for so long? I mean, like, we're talking probably 35 years, 30-ish years that it went without just being noticed. And do you think it's just the musical climate now with everybody so, overwhelmed with Taylor Swift and
Hmm.
her being with Travis Kelsey thanks to the NFL?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, allegedly.
Allegedly, when you wear the Jets cap, people know
Yeah.
that you are a loyal fan of something, even when it's
Mm-hmm.
terrible. So you're
Mm-hmm.
allowed to say that. You're allowed to make fun of the
Yes.
NFL. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a storyline aspect to it,
Oh, oh,
and I
for sure,
think I know what it is, but
for
we'll
sure.
see next year.
We'll see next year, and let's just say they know which box she's going to be in, and what angle to film her at, and which access to give her. With the entry to the different stadiums, and how Travis can be at concerts when he has to be at regimented practice. Whether or not it's NFL orchestrated, there's definitely public relations teams involved from a few parties.
Sure. And I mean, it's kind of smart, but
It's smart
whatever.
for everybody, but I've derailed you again about Little Ain't Enough. Go
It's
ahead,
fine.
Tommy.
It's fine. But yeah, just in a nutshell, why do you think that it doesn't get love from the common person? I mean, obviously diehards, we always are going to go back to that because we need that content
Yeah.
to consume. Those are, I mean, like, I've got them up here and I've even got VH1 over here, not the channel, the record.
Hmm.
But like, we need that content to like get through everyday life, whether it's, in the car going to work or
Yeah.
earbuds like me. I've been doing laundry all morning, so I've got, Dave playing in my ears just because I'm getting ready for this.
Totally.
But I mean, what
Why do I think that
what's
a
your
little ain't
thoughts on
enough,
it?
or why do I think that
The
this
solo, the core of the solo
right? Well,
era.
Bis- so it's different because Bissonette stuck around through the Little Ain't Enough album.
Right.
Vi left after the Skyscraper tour. Sheehan left after the Skyscraper
Album.
sessions.
Yeah.
So Dave, for better and for worse, is not a big spotlight sharer. It's the Dave show,
Mm-hmm.
and certain artists are like that, and then other artists think of their backing band as their band. Like Alice Cooper has always been excellent with going, hey, this is my band. It might not be the permanent band, but this is my band and I love them. And then they go, Uncle Alice, I have a new offer to do this. And he goes, I support that. We love you. Come back whenever. And that's why you see that Kip Winger has referred some of his current musicians. And keep in mind, Kip Winger has not been in Alice's band since what, 88? Um,
Yeah, I want to say right after Poison came out or
yeah.
Trash the album, but
And then when Nita Strauss couldn't do some of the touring, they brought back Kane Roberts, who hadn't
yeah,
been there for
which
30
was cool.
years. So there's certain artists who go, these are my long term people. I love them. I share the spotlight. Think of me as that. And then there's other people like Dave who go, I'm Dave. And
Yep.
I think with Eat 'em and Smile, it was a band album. And then once Sheehan was leaving the picture, it was no longer a band album. Those are just the hired guns. And
Right, which is crazy now to think about because it's Steve Vai.
it's not just Steve Vai. You think of how Billy Sheehan was arguably as big with Mr. Big. How big
Yeah,
Mr. Big has been in Asia for the last 35 years.
yeah, they just did, I mean, huge tour over there, and
Yeah,
yeah.
Bissonette, yes, he's a sideman, but he's been Ringo's drummer for 10, 15 years.
Your Ringo Starr's drummer.
Yeah. Brett Tuggle, who we sadly lost a while back, who co-wrote Just Like Paradise. I mean, he was in and out of Fleetwood Mac and Lindsey Buckingham and Page Coverdale. Was he Page Plan or Page Coverdale or both? I think both.
I think you're right. Yeah, I was actually just talking about Paige Coverdale the other day to somebody who had never heard of it. I was like, "You gotta check it
It
out."
is great, and
Yeah.
anyone who mocks Coverdale, I get on them big time because Coverdale always had the work ethic until a year or two ago. He fully, okay, I shouldn't say fully, until about 10 years ago, he had his full voice. It's gone down, but the stage performance and persona is still top notch. I respect Coverdale to no end, and I think he gets a bad rap for the Coverdale Page thing just because what Page didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I got way off topic. You just look at that backing band, you go Vi, Bissonette, Tuggle, and Sheehan. And even if you go, okay, well, Sheehan was out of the picture for the tour, and it was Matt Bissonette. Okay, Matt Bissonette's been Elton John's guy for 10, 15 years. He himself had a record deal or two. Heavy hitter as well.
He's but Dave's always found a way to, like, find a band. Like, I mean, he had John 5 in his band for a while, and I know you've talked to John, who's a huge Kiss fan, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
That's somebody I'd love to chat with because we could get real nerdy. But, I mean, and there's slowly things that come out, and Dave just released, like, the updated version of Jump, which I just assume those are, like, rehearsal tracks for the Vegas shows, right?
No, sorry to
No?
correct you. Sorry to correct you.
No, you're good. No, correct me, I wanna know.
After the last Vegas residency got canceled, he basically summoned his band into Henson for Dave says it was 2 hours. It was not 2 hours. I have proof of all that, but 1 or 2 days of recordings of the people from that band that was rehearsing for Vegas, and then cut somewhere between 15 and 20 songs from his old catalog. He said how many it was, but there's so many up in the air details. So on bass, it was Ryan Wheeler, drums, Francis Valentino, guitar, Alistrada. And I can't confirm that the keyboard part on Jump was done by Danny Wagner, who was in Warrant. He was the drummer of Warrant, yet a keyboard player. That guy's
For David Lee
phenomenally
Roth.
talented.
That's awesome, though. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea when it was done. It was just assuming because, you read everything about how they use backing tracks and how the band wasn't really singing. They were actually using Michael Anthony's harmony track, all that stuff. So,
I don't
I mean, it is
let
what.
me ask you that. Let me
Sure.
rudely interrupt you for the
No, you're good. You're good.
when
Go
Sammy
for it.
Hagar says that Michael Anthony's backing vocals were used live, I don't see how that's possible because
Mhm.
Van Halen had an offstage keyboardist a lot of the time, Alan
Right.
Fitzgerald from Night Ranger. So
Mhm.
isn't it more likely that they had an offstage backing vocalist than they were syncing their live performance to
I,
to Michael
I
Anthony's
I think
vocal?
that's more likely. Yeah. I mean, is
Yeah,
it possible with today's, whatever? Because I mean, we just dealt with this with Paul Stanley as well, who like, he's him and Dave have always been my two vocal idols, other than Elvis, of course. But
sure.
I mean, as far as like hard rock, quote unquote heavy metal, I don't classify either of those as heavy metal singers, but some people do.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. It is technically possible. I've heard about other classic rock bands, without naming names, having a tech whose job it is to make sure that the person's vocals is not playing when they move away from the microphone.
Mhm.
I've heard about that stuff. That's happening. That you have fillers and all that kind of stuff. But I
But when
think
you're looking at singers and artists that are, in their 70s, pushing 80, Look at the Stones, man. I mean, Mick Jagger's still up there, Keith Richards is still up there. And there's, I've read things about Keith Richards, and I'm like, come on. I just don't understand why everybody has to like be so negative about music. Just enjoy it. If you're Yeah, it sucks if especially if you're like a purist going to a show and yeah, they're not playing completely live or they're not singing live. Does it suck? Yes. Did you know that going in? If you're really paying that much to go see them, chances are you knew ahead of time, or you've got enough money that I don't really feel that bad for you.
Well, I have a Kiss related question for you.
Sure.
That
Go
last
for it.
show, some of the Paul, we've heard that, hey, Paul's uh, vocal record, allegedly, we're going to say the word allegedly 5 times.
Yeah.
Doc McGee does not
Yes.
strike down upon us. Okay, allegedly,
I'm more worried about Gene.
we've heard that some of Paul's vocals were canned. But I
Mhm.
thought with this Garden show, some of the songs might have been canned, but some of them sounded live.
Yeah. It's a blend. Apparently he's singing, but there's certain, like, I noticed, like, Shout It Out Loud definitely seemed a little canned.
Yeah,
Say Yeah from Sonic Boom 100% had to have been canned, allegedly,
allegedly.
because the power and, the just the power and the phrasing didn't match very well, and they had video issues, with the interviews. I don't know if you saw, like, the pre-show and all that stuff,
Yeah,
but, like, it was like they were using the MSG screens as the output for the pay-per-view, so that's why the audio and the video didn't sync quite well for the, interviews that they did earlier in the day or the day before.
got it. I didn't hear that part of it. I did
Yeah.
enjoy the post performance interview with Gene where he talked about his kidney stone. That was the first thing he
It's on the tip of my cock. His schmeckle.
yeah,
Anytime Gene says schmeckle, it gets me.
yeah. So one of the things I was talking about at the beginning of the interview is that I'm enjoying doing this podcast because you get it because you understand kayfabe. I don't think that
Mhm.
David Lee Roth is the only person we're talking about who gets kayfabe. Gene is a kayfabe master. And the first time I interviewed him, which was in person in a hotel in New York, like 2 years before COVID, I was shaking in my shoes because I'm going, oh, he's going to make fun of me. He's going to put me on the spot. And the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of the interview, he was doing and just like gymnasium, that is a large word. Like he was doing all the Gene isms.
You're a powerful and attractive man. This is Gene Simmons of
Yeah,
Kiss.
he was doing every Craig Gass impression related
Yeah.
thing we were expecting. But as it went on, he was being more of his natural self because I think I was asking him about things that he doesn't get asked about, like his technique for vocal harmonies, because I thought Gene has always been great. And the more time that went on, kind of saw Gene the real person, watching him hanging out signing autographs because they didn't kick me out of that hotel room. Now, I think that a lot of this book is about trying to figure out the magic tricks behind Dave. Most people would just go, that was a cool magic trick. But I think people like you and me go, that's great and all, but how did they do that? And you watch it over and over and over again. You try and figure it out.
Where does that line exactly blur?
Yes. And I still don't know after writing this book where Diamond Dave ends. I think at the beginning it was clear where Diamond Dave ends. I don't think he even knows at this point in time where Diamond Dave ends.
That's I've said that several times about tons of artists. It's like I talked about with like the canned questions, the canned answers, obviously being a podcaster, YouTuber, whatever you want to call it, you have the canned questions just like the artist, author, whoever that's been doing it for 40, 50 years, they have those canned answers. And like especially like with Gene and Paul, I got to tie it back into Kiss for a second.
Sure.
They have those canned answers that we all know,
Yes.
and some of us love them, some of us hate them. And my thing is like you said, they don't know where the character ends or begins because they've been doing it so long. They'll switch. Gene and Paul will switch who says the same answer that the other one used in the interview
Yes.
before. I love it. It's
I
my favorite thing.
I love it too. I think that you kind of, with it being a Kiss fan, at first the hits are kind of the gateway. You see the visual look and hear the hits,
Yeah.
and you go, okay. Then you get into the deep cuts and you kind of love it. Then they do a couple of things that kind of irk you, and you go, I hate these guys. But then it's such a love hate thing
Yeah.
that you ultimately love them more than you hate them. It's almost like
Yeah.
Howard Stern. Howard has changed over the years, and you go from loving Howard to hating Howard, but you still monitor everything that's happening. That's
Yeah.
how a lot of my interests have gone, WWE included. I
I'm out, man. I'm out on wrestling. I'm serious. I am out. That's why we switched to music, man. I can't do it anymore.
but I
I
love
mean,
to get to the
my respect to anybody who can still stick with it. I mean, I still love watching the old stuff, but I just can't with current either either product. And even like Japan, we did a ton of stuff with New Japan, and I just can't do it anymore.
it is tough to keep up because there's now 5 companies on regular US television. All the wrestlers who have vlogs and active social media and are trying to create storylines on social media, it's so hard to keep up with that and music.
I was starting to have
And
panic attacks, man.
yeah.
And I worked with some of them, and
Oh,
good
we gotta
guys,
talk more about that offline for sure.
Jesus. Yes, you got it, man. Don't worry about it. It's a lot. And I mean, music's fun because it's something that I consume all day, every day, and
Yeah.
have my entire life. So it's a little different. And like if I get tired of something, I can just go to something else I like. You know what I mean? So I could watch Dave Lee Roth interviews for 4 hours during the day while I'm doing something. And then, like, okay, I'm kind of Diamond Daved out. I'm gonna go watch, the same Kiss interview for the 50th time this week.
I'm with you. I go high grade into Kiss and David Lee Roth and Van Halen sweeps, where that's all I listen to, and then I get sick of it for a couple months. Right now, I'm out of the cycle, especially because I have to plug the book. But
My wife called me out on that, by the way.
oh, same here. So I do the Palette Cleanser, which is Level 42, the UK kind of prog jazz pop band, like a palette cleanser, and
Okay.
New Model Army, which is this kind of still active but 80s punkish, sometimes acoustic band, and New Order. I do that as the palette cleanser. Then there's going to come a certain time of the year where it's all Skyscraper and all 1984 and all Van Halen 2 all the time. Then we're going to get sick of it, and then it's a cycle.
Yep. My palate cleanser is Bruce Springsteen
Okay.
and anything like 80s pop. And then I'll go into this weird like mid 90s because my cutoff for music is 1995. I won't listen to anything after that.
Hmm.
It can be a band that came out before then releasing new stuff. I'll check that out. But any band that came out like after 1995, sans a few, will not be touched.
So you
I just
won't
can't
touch
do
the
it.
darkness?
Oh, I love The Darkness.
Okay, that's a post
That
95 band
sans,
for you.
sans a few. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Queens of the
I
Stone
love
Age
The
formed before
Darkness.
95, but anytime there's a new Queens of the Stone Age album, to me, that's still exciting.
Yeah. Well, and Queens, I can give a little bit of leeway to because Dave Grohl's involved,
Sure.
or at least the first album. So I give them a little bit of, because they are very talented.
Yeah,
It's a
I
very good
I
band.
think this is still a golden age for music. People don't talk about that so much. It's a golden age for podcasts, it's a golden age for television. With wrestling, if you love wrestling, there's 24/7 content and merchandise. There's that too. Whatever you're into these days, that's there's endless supplies of that. You want to watch people game and play Fortnite all day, you can do that. And I think that that
Ugh.
kind of gives way as to why MTV is not following Dave, because they're looking for new. Knowing our target.
MTV doesn't follow any music anymore. Let's be
Well, I
honest.
asked about that when I interned for Atlantic in 2000. And I was part of this college marketing rep program. I was going, hey, are videos ever going to come back? And this was the number 3 or 4 at Atlantic. And he goes, well, MTV's ratings go down when they show video. And the target demographic is, and he told me the ages. And you go, oh, okay. I get it.
Attention spans are this now.
Yeah.
Which is funny because, like, you brought up the gaming thing. My kids can sit there and watch one gaming stream for 12 hours on a weekend, but, it's hard to get somebody to watch a minute short sometimes. And yeah, I mean, we talk about stuff that kids don't want to hear about. And my demographic is not 18 and under anyways. Mine is more of that 35 to 65 range,
I'm
which is
with
great.
you, but who are the people who are spending the disposable income these days?
That's
It's
exactly where I was going. Wrestling minds. I like it. Wrestling and
exactly.
rock and roll. That's our minds. But anyway, so I know you're running low on time. I didn't mean to even go this long. I'm sorry. I
Hey,
apologize.
thank
We
you.
got off topic. Let's plug the book one more time and where everybody can find you, and I'll link everything, obviously.
Thanks on all ends, Tommy. Thank you for having me. A pleasure to connect with a like-minded person. Maybe we'll have you on the DLR cast in the near future. But the book is DLR Book: How David Lee Roth Changed the World. It's out through Backbeat and Roman and Littlefield. Amazon, Target, Walmart, basically anywhere you'd buy a book online. The stores, I'm waiting to hear more, but it's all pre orderable everywhere. And if anyone wants to reach out, get at me through the paltrowcast.com website. Weekly show on 150 plus channels and OTT carriers like Local Now, and then plus there's a DLR cast. If you want to find me for that or the PI stuff, you can find me.
Can I ask a personal question real quick?
You may. Will I answer a different answer though?
When is the DLR cast coming back?
We did an episode about a week and a half ago. I think we'll have another one in the next week and a half to 2 weeks. It's a mix of when Dave does something, Sammy does something, or there's something to rant about.
Okay, cool. Because I've found myself going back since we've been talking the last few days, and I'm like trying to consume all that stuff
Oh,
now. Because I'm like, ooh,
thank you
now I'm in.
for it.
It intrigued my interest.
You're too kind, and just keep up the great work on what you're doing on
Hey,
all
man,
ends, Tommy. Thank you for having me.
appreciate it. It only took 6 years to get where we're at.
Onwards and
Leaving
upwards.
wrestling was a huge part of it.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right, man. Thanks so much.